All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of Healedish. This is part 2 of Emily's story. So if you have not already listened to part 1, please go and listen to that, or else you will be very confused. But with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump into part 2.
And you're raising all this tons of money to go to a campus, live in a nice place, and then go to the beach. Like, that was one of the hardest things for me with Crew, is because I'm like, people are dying. This money, these finances could make a huge difference. And already then, so I was like, I knew I didn't want to stay in Crew, even though I loved the people, even though I was like, I just didn't. That was like the hardest thing for me. And so anyway, studied abroad, and it was very hard for me being there. Tempted to not be led astray, I guess is what they would have said, because mainly because there were like so many similarities, like at the university, so it's Catholic, but we were encouraged because where I studied in Bangalore, there's so many different religions, and they really believe in like unity and their diversity, and it's still a very peaceful place despite all the religions. So they want kids to learn that, how you can like see and experience different religions, have respect for other people, and have peace with one another and carry out your values and norms in the faith. And so I went to a Sikh temple, I went to a Hindu temple, I went to a Buddhist monastery, I went to I went to so many. I met a Jain temple, and I went to a mosque, and like so many different religions. And what I also saw was a lot of things that are happening, that especially the charismatic movement was saying that this is because it's the Holy Spirit and Jesus that are happening in these places. Really looks like people are speaking in tongues at the Hindu temple in the way that they're doing things. Mm-hmm. Really sounds the exact same. Lots of stories of, Muslim students, and they became Muslim because they have a relative who was healed by a miracle. So all this is like evil and the devil, but then, the way of evangelicalism is the only right way, and everything else is the devil, even though it's like been healing, restorative, all these things. And it's also bizarre because if you look up like things like speaking in tongues, actually that practice of people like kind of murmuring and doing that is not only in Christianity, mm-hmm. It is in other faith practices, and it's when you're in like this meditative state. And so it's just kind of like, either the devil's doing the same thing in other religions and also healing people and creating these restorative experiences, or it's all fake and none of it's real, and we're all just doing this human thing of, And so these are actually questions I asked later.
No, right? I mean, like, it reminds me of, I follow No Nonsense Spirituality, and she was talking about how, near-death experiences, it's very interesting because a lot of Christians will say that they know that the faith is real because they've heard these near-death experiences where people say they see Jesus when they died. But she said the interesting thing is if you go look at other religions, they also have those claims that they see the head of their faith as well. So it's interesting because they're experiencing a lot of similar things. So it just goes back to that question of like, what is really going on here?
Yeah, exactly. And so, that was a thing too. Yeah, that's a lot of people, how they came into the faith. It was a situation, like what I've heard. And I was surrounded by tons of different religions. I also stayed in the university housing, in the girls' university housing, and so we were like with a ton of other students from all over, mostly it was mostly India, Nepal, and some countries from Africa, and so it was also really interesting hearing conversations, and even all these people, when they weren't Christian, they'd be like, wow, you're like the first Christian I've ever talked to that just wants to maybe even have a friendship and just really hear about, life and really cares and isn't just trying to like push me and convert me. And then I was just kind of like, like, I'm so sorry, because that's not supposed to be the way. It's about love. And then as I'm like saying this, I'm like, but then all I'm doing and being taught is to like convert in these trips that I'm being on in this university movement. So much cognitive dissonance, because what I tell people, like, no, it's not just about let's get you on our team. It's about like God's love and, you know, being able to see that in each other. And, but yeah, so studied there. And also talking to leaders there when I'd have these questions, because I'd be honest with them and I'd be like, I'm having a really hard time of being like, why, how come this is the only way? And then like these people who are living beautiful lives or helping the most vulnerable people, they're the evil ones that are going to go to hell. Like, I don't understand. And it's like, you're being tempted. You're being like, I literally was told that. It's like trying to lead you astray. It's that spiritual warfare. Don't let the devil get you. And so I came back from studying abroad. And I also came back as well, like, because the university was just like, you know, we see, like Gandhi said, you know, Jesus was a wonderful person. Gandhi really loved Jesus. He just didn't love Christians. And he has like a quote about that too, because of like the horrible things that they've done. And so he's like, so us, we see Gandhi as like a brother in the faith. You know, it's about following the way of Jesus, doing these things. And then people are like, Catholic University, it's the works. But every organization that was actually doing things that was helping was Catholic. In Christian organizations that were helping were Catholic. And I'm like, yeah, when you aren't doing anything, how is that showing the love of God when people are living in such dire poverty?
They act like works is so wrong. But, you know, like the way it was phrased to me is like, oh, they're just working to try to get into heaven. But I mean, they're doing a lot of good for the community. And it's almost like the idea of works was just disgusting to them. But I mean, they're the ones who are really helping. Not to say there aren't other like evangelical people who are helping, but I've noticed a pattern, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I still feel like even if it's evangelical and they are still helping, it's still like their salvation, making sure they don't go to hell because of that belief. That is like the number one reason.
Yeah.
Like your soul is number one.
It's because of this.
Yes. So we'll do these things to help, because also that is part of it, but it's like your eternal salvation. And people are like, this world is horrible. People are suffering and they're dying. We want them to at least be free in heaven. So I get like that mentality too, of like, you're suffering so much, you know, I want you to have peace in the next life. So I've heard that as well, but, I think just a lot of the money and resources towards doing that could actually help create a better world now. So I came back, and being really passionate about human rights, I did a lot of really great programs. I studied women's issues as well in India, and I got to go like do kids programs, actual kids programs, not like Teen Mania. Yeah. And things like that. I got to work at an incredible place that supports people with HIV, and then a lot of people would end up passing away, and they'd have children, and so then it turned into an orphanage as well, and it was just like it was beautiful programs, and that was a Catholic program as well. And so I was just like, I was like, I really want to use my passion for human rights and my desire to follow Jesus, who cares about the marginalized, and like bring that together. So I want to work for a human rights Christian organization. That's like, it was like not converting, but to the other side, focus more on. And so I ended up, I didn't ask them actually. I should have asked them about like sharing some of these stories and stuff because they're for still a lot of my friends and things.
Oh, really?
But, I ended up interning with International Justice Mission in India, and that my boss is actually like a I think like an Orthodox Christian. Her family like can trace back like very, very far back in Christianity, way further than when it ever got to like the US and Europe and such. And she is just, amazing person. She's still my friend to this day, and she taught me so much. She especially about like, because a lot of people did, especially interns would want to come and they would want to like, oh, they need to know Jesus. And she's like, we're not using this like opportunity with these vulnerable people who are so grateful, because it's an anti-human trafficking organization. Sorry, it's we're focuses on several human rights areas, but anti-human trafficking was a big part of it. Bonded labor was like our specific office. And so for them, it was like, no, we're going here to be like the hands and feet of Jesus. We're here to actually like make an impact. The person who founded it was I think the investigative lawyer for the genocide in Rwanda, after the genocide in Rwanda. And he was like, how can we work with like local people there in the law to actually make sure people are being rescued, and also wanting to make it very like localized. So all the employees there are Indian nationals. And so my boss is, she was just amazing. Really had awesome. Like that heart. And so I learned a lot of these things as well of like, and also like, this is why you don't have, white people come and being like the lead of this or trying to take over. No, this is actually really toxic. Actually, this is what colonialism did to my country. And this is what like the white man's version of Christianity did to my culture and my family, who knew about Jesus way before any of you all did. That was kind of like a lot that you learn, and the heart behind it. It was really beautiful. And so I really, and the founder is Anglican as well. It's not an evangelical organization. Nice. It is like people are hired, like it's under the branch, it's a big branch, but it's like my roommate, and she became one of my best friends, is Catholic. One person, there were like Pentecostal people, there were very Orthodox people, there were Anglicans, like it was such a mix. And it was really about like, okay, we come together and then we go out and do the incredible work. Yeah. Before I went to IJM, actually, that's how I met my husband and ended up here in Europe. So that's why I was like, I should probably mention that. Yeah. But before I went to India, with IJM, I was about to graduate, and my brother, who has a lot of addiction issues, ended up going to prison, and my grandmother died, and it was like right before my finals, I think like 2 days before my finals or something. And so I already knew I was wanted to go to IGM and live out these passions, but I also felt so like there's so much hurt and just sadness and things with my own family. And so I was like, I really want to like just go somewhere before I go into more heavy work into like human rights. I really want to just go out away. Maybe I'll go. And someone had told me about like a Bible college in Austria or in Europe, not just in Europe, and that you can volunteer at. So you wouldn't actually be going to the classes, but you could stay there for room and board. And then you can, do stuff on the weekend with the students. So I wasn't actually a student there, but I would like volunteer. And, and when I looked them all up, I loved The Sound of Music, and I was like, I could be in Austria, and it's close to Salzburg. So I was like,
Sound of Music.
Yeah, I'll go there. And so I was like, this is going to be my healing time before I go off and do that. And so I did that also. That was another wild story, because I'm like, I am working. Oh my God. We were like, this felt like it's just unpaid labor. It's just like they give you a small stipend of barely anything a month. And then you are working from like sometimes 6 a.m. to like 8 p.m. at night. You are like cleaning all the rooms. You're making food. You are like running the whole thing unpaid. And so I'm like, this is not a vacation. I am so exhausted. I have never had to do so much for so little. It was,
oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Again, the people
so it's not what
amazing.
You thought it was going to be.
No, I was exhausted. And the people are amazing, but the institution, again, was just, yeah. So then after that, I met a friend there who was also working there from Australia, and she and I were like, let's travel around Europe afterwards before we go back. And so we decided to make like a trip. And I also had a friend living in the Netherlands, so I was like, I'll go visit her. And that's where like I'll end up. So we did like a whole little backpacking. I'm like,
it's so fun.
Another thing, I'm like, I look back, I'm like couch surfing at strangers' houses. I'm like, yeah, some of these things, I'm like, sometimes it is a miracle I'm still like here and okay.
I feel that way too. I'm like, we are lucky to be alive. We did some very interesting things.
Yes. And so we did that. And then I went to church with her. Also at this point, I was thinking I'm probably going to end up being just a single missionary the rest of my life, because who's going to want to go off to like Asia to fight, anti-human trafficking and do all this, this work, when especially in crew, when it's just kind of all about like, no, I was really like the how do you say that? Like the black sheep of the bunch, because I'm like, this is what we all do, right? This is what it's like to be Christian, right? And that's like, for them, it's like you're a Republican, stamped, you go to church on Sundays, that's how we do it. And I'm just like, I thought we're following Jesus and doing the thing.
Let's do it.
Like, did you ever see that meme when she's like, I thought we were going and doing the thing.
Oh my gosh, yes, yeah.
Formerly oppressed, yeah. And I'm like, so me. And so I was like, so I'll probably end up being just like, one of those single people going off and doing things. And also just the way that a lot of the men were, and how women who spoke up was treated, it was just like really damaging in crew, to be honest. And so anyway, I went to church with my friend in the Netherlands, and then I like saw this man across the room, and it's like this dark beard, dark hair, and he's got like these bright blue-green eyes. I think my husband's very gorgeous. And and I've never done that. I've never been someone that just sees someone across the room and I'm like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. And also it was a thing of like, well, I'll show that later. So I was staring at him, and then someone was like, oh, you're going to go. It was right before I was going to move to India. You're going to move to India to work for the anti-human trafficking organization. You should meet Ruben. Oh. And so I was like, I wasn't going to say his name, but oh well. And so I was introduced, and I'm like, it's him. It's the guy. And he's like, oh yeah, you're moving to the city? I've been to that city, and I helped I was the photographer for an anti-human trafficking documentary that we made there. And he was the missionary kid that was born and grew up in Nepal. And I loved so much about Nepal, because a lot of the journalistic work I was doing, there was a lot of stories and incidents from Nepal, and so I loved stuff that came out from there. So anyway, met him, was like, but I'll never see him again. And then he like found me on Facebook. Not even on Facebook anymore, but like he found me through my friend, and then just started messaging me, and we ended up becoming like best friends online, basically. And and another
y'all
thing
had
too
so
is,
much
like,
in common.
And also like the life verse, it really, one time I was like going through a really hard time with my family, and I was like, I should go to the Bible, but I don't even know what to find in here, because it was also new to me. So I just like Googled like, encouraging Bible verses, and found Joshua 1:9, which is like, be strong and courageous. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified or discouraged, because God is with you wherever you go. And so I was like, that's my life verse. And my friend had given me a little shield with that verse on it. And he had the shield of Joshua with the verse, that exact verse tattooed on his chest.
No way. That's so crazy.
So these are all always like part of my stories where it's like, God did show up. And I'm just like, beautiful things have happened throughout it. And so yeah, we ended up becoming just like best friends. And then when I went to India, he also came and visited me, and we went to like Cambodia and Thailand together with some of our friends. And then he was like, in Cambodia, he was like, oh, I want you, even though we're worlds apart, I want to make it work because I feel like you're my person and I want to pursue you. And it was so beautiful. And we're in like climbing all the temples in Siem Reap. And then the next day I got stung in the face by a bee.
No.
And my entire face like swelled up.
Oh my gosh, did you have to go to the doctor?
Well, they didn't have any like emergency rooms around that I could find, and we couldn't talk to anyone, so I just was like, someone was like, here, take this balm and rub it in your eye, and so I couldn't see for like a couple days, and it was awful, so.
So are you allergic?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Turns out I am.
That's
I am now.
crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
I like sharing that story because everyone's like, how romantic, you started dating in Cambodia. I'm like, yeah, until I got stung in the face by a hornet. Yeah, exactly. But we were visiting my other friends who were also interning at IJM in Thailand. And so then we went with them. Anyway, came back and we decided that I would move to the Netherlands and come here because I also had a friend here, and it was easier, and we were like, that's going to be our base, and we are going to create kind of like a home base, come together, and then we're going to go off and do a lot of mission work or do human rights work, or wanted to do a combination. And then we came here, we got married, and there's a lot in all this church life and stuff in itself. Yeah. I will say that the pastor who married us is still like, he's in our lives, and he also was, he was only there, the pastor, for a little while, but just an amazing man. And he also was very much about like advocating for women and very much passionate about human rights and a lot of these evangelical undertones I'd always been shared. He had a very different view on things that was really refreshing, but we ended up moving to a smaller city here. We were in one of the biggest cities in the Netherlands, and we ended up moving to a smaller city because my husband was like, I just want to go help people. And I'm like, yeah, but you studied photography. Like, how are we going to help? Like, for me, after all my experience and work and stuff, I was like, what IJM taught me is also like, you don't want to go and take jobs of other people. What's something that you can contribute that's like, I don't want to raise all this money to go take a job from someone else when all that money you raise could support so many people there. Yeah. So if there's like specific tools or skills or things we can do that are actually going to help, and we could find a way to be self-sustainable, like tent makers, like we'll have our own income, find a way, so we're not going to use this money. And so then, and I was like, you keep saying you want to help people, but how? Like, you just existing as like a white man in this country. And he grew up as a missionary kid, and that was just the mindset. Like, God doesn't call the equip, he equips the called type thing. So we'll just go and God will use us. And I've been like, I've seen a lot of harm in that. So like, what do we want to do? And I was like, me being American, I'm like, he's like, oh, well, I'd love to go back to university, but it's like 1,000 euros, so like $1,200. And he's like, so, and I'm just like, I will support us and you can go back to university. Are you kidding me? 1,200 euros?
You're like, wow, that's nothing in comparison.
Nothing.
We're struggling over here in America.
Yes, exactly. So we moved to a smaller city, and that's where a lot of my charismatic trauma comes from, personal trauma. And he started going to that university. And while I was there, we went to, do you know Vineyard Church? Have you heard of Vineyard?
I've heard of it. So where was this?
They're based in California, but I went to one in just a small city in the Netherlands.
Got it. Okay, I've heard of the name of it, yeah, but I don't know too much.
So it's like the Toronto blessing. That was all That was all like vineyard.
Can you explain what the Toronto blessing is? Just you don't have to have a lot of details, but
I think you probably know.
Oh gosh, I listened to a podcast about it a couple years ago on Heaven Bent, but I don't know if I really remember all the details. But basically, there was some revival out in Toronto where they believed that God's Spirit was being poured out, and a lot of these sorts of ministries like Bethel and IHOP, I know were connected to the Toronto blessing. I'll have to look more into it, but it was a big revival.
Yes, and a lot of people always kind of would go back, like Vineyard would go back to the Toronto blessing as like, here is a thing that's not explainable because these miracles are just like, cannot be explained. And so Heaven Bent podcast, which I love, she's amazing because she's like, I want to figure out like, because I grew up in this, is this real, or not? And so she literally goes to all these famous stories and interviews them and it's like, no, that's not actually what happened. And
she's the best.
She's the best. Highly recommend that podcast for people. But so anyway, this Vineyard Church, we were going there, and my husband's studying social work. So he said he wanted to help people. So he thought social work and finding programs that are new and innovative, because that's like a big thing with the Netherlands is finding these programs that could really help. And I had a lot of friends in India that are social workers that are like, yes, we need this. Like this would be, add a lot of value, and we would love, if you and Emily came, like this is the type of things. And they're all like Indian locals that we like work under and just like provide support is kind of what we were thinking. And so we go to this Vineyard Church with our friends, also the friend that was that I met my husband through with her church and her husband and another friend. And so we're going there, and my husband's studying social work, like I said, and the church just starts saying things that we're just like, and my husband and I have already been like deconstructing a bit, at least decolonizing, because of my time in with IJM and my passion and background in human rights and journalism. I'd already been like deconstructing a lot of these things when it came into conflict with human rights, or when it came into like a lot of the kind of political conservative evangelicalism, because I was always like, that is not, my mom is like very liberal, very like, feminist.
So you were already untangling some of the more harmful aspects.
Yes. Or I was always like, I never believed in that. I never saw that. I never read it in the Bible because I didn't grow up into this. I just read the Bible and was like, oh, Old Testament was just old stories, and the new, what Jesus, this is what we follow. So for me, I was like, I don't even see any of this in here. Oh, not any, a lot of it, because with the Bible, I was still reading like NIV, ESV Bibles, so that only takes you so far. Totally. But so this church would start saying things like very transphobic things, and saying things that were not true. And my husband was just like, we just literally had a trans student come and talk to us yesterday, and the person who was talking about these things is literally lying. They are not doing this. They are not trying to put this in the law. They were not trying to tell people to pick their own. They can just pick their own gender. This is not true. These things that they're trying to implement in school right now is to save people's lives, because the suicide rate is so incredibly high, even in a progressive country like the Netherlands, because of conservative religion like this. And so it's literally like programs are trying to do to save kids' lives. This is not. And so my husband is just like, I am not. Like, that was like one of the talks. Another one was, there was a woman who went on a mission trip and came back to share the story, how she went to do street evangelism, and she reached out to someone, and a woman who had been raped, and the woman was going to go get an abortion, but they were all outside of the abortion clinic, and she was like, if you go and do that, then you can't be a Christian, and you are going to be a murderer. And people were clapping like, yes. And then, yeah.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
and then they were like, but God ended up taking care of it anyway because she had a miscarriage. And they're like, wow, so she didn't even. And then I'm just like, are you kidding me? And I was so triggered. And I look around and I'm like, how are people.
Insane stories
Yes.
I've ever. That's
And
crazy.
And everyone's just like clapping this, and except for one other girl and I are just looking at each other like, what? And also,
so they were happy that she miscarried? Because to them, she
like,
didn't commit murder?
Yeah. And then God still took away the problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Won't he do it? Gosh, that's crazy.
And during this time also, I was going through an ectopic pregnancy. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like, where the
but you can explain
embryo gets stuck. Yeah, it's when it's a pregnancy and the embryo got stuck in my fallopian tube. And so I was told that they were going to have to try to save my tube, and I had to be injected with like chemotherapy injections, basically, to try to break down the embryo so that I would survive. And I was like, no, I'm going to be a murderer. Can't you just save what's growing? Can't you just save the baby and take me instead? And my husband was like, no, what? And like, but this is kind of the type of rhetoric. And they're like, you will die, and this is not a baby. This is an embryo that is growing, but like there's no chance. There's no life that's going to come from it. And the reason why I felt this way, by the way, is because that church, when I was sitting in Sundays, they were like, talked about things like, they talked about abortion like the week before, and were like, you need to trust that God can heal. God could do the miracle of move, like that was in my head, like God could do anything. And so God could heal that from whatever is meant to happen. If you trust and believe, that's going to happen. So basically it's like, if I believe enough, then, what if it will get better? What if it'll move? What if it'll take care of itself? What if,
maybe he will reward your
murderer.
Yeah,
or I'm the murderer for getting rid of that, is basically how I felt because of the way they'd explain things. If you interrupt or do anything regarding reproductive health or regarding pregnancies, if you intervene, then you are a murderer and you're getting in the way of God's plan. And that is how I felt. And they're like, no, you will die. And like they had to be like, listen to me. Like this is not, And so I'm like dealing with that, and I'm getting these chemotherapy injections, and then having to go to the church, and an old lady who was like the prophet there, it comes over to and like puts her hand on my stomach and was just like, yes, God's doing something great there. Like there is like something like, oh, pray blessings on the life of this child. And I was just like, what? And she's like, oops, I got you confused with someone else.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I could see
good spiritual insight.
Yeah. If that were me, I would feel like, wait a second, was that actually God? And are you trying to tell me something right now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then it got into the point where it did become like I had to be rushed to the emergency room and have an emergency operation. And if I would have been like an hour late, I would have died. Which is also now everything going on in the US. I have a dear friend who's there, and she needed a life-saving medical care because her pregnancy just became how do you say that? Like, I do
not viable
in Dutch. So yes, and so she was like, so they had to, and she was like, if it would have been a week later because of the laws that they changed, I don't know if I'd be here today. And so situations like this, women have died from ectopic pregnancies because they won't do anything because they say it's abortion. And so it's like, so those talks are also going on. And then we also went to go to a sozo. I think that comes from Bethel, like the sozo praying. And it's like, when you have emotional trauma and stuff that you just like, they'll pray and open the doors, and if you have faith, it's basically like you're going to get healed. And I had severe anxiety because of my fear of hell, and my family members would end up going to hell if they died, and that like triggered anxiety, like a deep anxiety in me. And so I went there for that, and I'm just like, that there were no counselors, no expertise, made it worse by the things that they said and did, and there was no healing after that. So that was also this very charismatic church that was happening. And then after the ectopic pregnancy and it being a smaller city, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. We are done. We need to go. And we needed to be in an international city because it was so Dutch, also to the point where like, oh, you're different, you have an accent, people in the church wouldn't want to talk to me. It's very different than like American church in that sense, where you walk in and then you feel like people come up and they're friendly. It's not really like that in the Netherlands, at least in this city. So I was like, also I got pregnant again, thankfully, with my first son. And then I was prophesied that it was a girl by 3 different people. And then when I found out I was having a boy, I thought I was gonna have a miscarriage. Because everyone prophesied that it was a girl. Words.
And your history as well. So I feel like what's interesting is I'm surprised that they would prophesy that it was a girl, because Bethel has this thing, which it's problematic in its own way, but where they say don't prophesy mate states or babies. What's funny is that Bethel has this rule that you basically don't prophesy things that can be checked. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to dates and babies and things that are like very certain, you're not supposed to prophesy those. So I feel like a lot of the words that end up coming out of Bethel is like, it's going to be a season of change. It's all vague enough to where you can't really check it.
I see a tree growing.
Yes, and you're strong and rooted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but for them to be so certain and to say that, it also, like, what's the point? What's the point of doing that in the first place? It's interesting.
Yeah, they also prophesied before my ectopic pregnancy of like God's, because we were asking for prayer, where do we end up? And that it was prophesied that God was saying we should go to Nepal and we'd have a baby girl. If we would have been in Nepal when I had my ectopic pregnancy, I would have died. So I'm glad we didn't listen to that prophecy, and we kept Ruben in school, and we were just like, no, we want to be wise about this. And yes, this seems like they said it's from God and we want to trust this person, but like now is not the time. So maybe it's for the future.
What were you feeling at the time when you started to realize that these prophetic words that they were giving you were wrong?
Really, it shook a lot. I think because I was still someone that I believed like God could do anything. And so for me, like having these things continue to be wrong was just kind of like, this is not like, I can't be a part of it. Like that's what made us be like, we want to leave. And also a lot of things were like the way that they read the Bible and how horrible we saw misinformation, because Ruben, for example, was learning about how as a social worker, and he was going to a Christian university, how as a social worker you can support your LGBTQ plus clients, and then hearing all these lies about queer people. It was just like because of the way that they were looking at the Bible. So I was already looking at like, okay, is like people talk about different translations. I was already reading all the Rachel Held Evans books and things like that. Wow. So that personally I felt like, okay, it feels like this is the church. What you're also told a lot of times, because you'll see you probably hear a theme in my story of like, I go to a group and I'm like, oh, this isn't uncomfortable, but I want to follow the good way of Jesus. Oh yeah, this group, no. Oh yeah, but this, and then there's so much pain and hurt and things that are not happening. And I got to the point, oh, it's just American evangelicalism. I'm not in America right now. And my mother-in-law has said that before too. Oh, but that's not evangelicalism. That's American evangelicalism. I'm like, all these things that are coming from your church come from the U.S. Like people from her church go to Bethel and then they come back radicalized.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just, at first I was like, no, it's just this one church. And then ends up being the next group. But, so yeah, we moved to International City, which we're at here now. And then my first child was born during COVID. Yeah, I love him so much. And my husband and I were just kind of like, okay, we're going to try. It is nice. We're in a new city. It's during COVID. They're doing stuff online. So we do want to be in an international, diverse group. What are the things that we really value? We value, the acceptance, not just accepting, but empowerment of all people. We want, inclusion is a top priority. So we messaged a church here who I actually knew the pastor, but she's like an interim pastor because they had issues and then she took over for a while. And I messaged them and I was like, hey, we're really passionate about human rights and justice. What is your stance on LGBTQ plus inclusion? What are things going on? There's a lot of stuff going on. I think I also asked about addressing things going on regarding racism and some things. And she sent back this very long, this message of just when I read it then, it seemed like, yes, all are welcome. It's so great you have that passion for people. These are also complicated issues with layers, but my heart is to care for everyone. And we want this to be where anyone feels welcome. So when I first read it, I was just kind of like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air compared to what I've been to before.
Yeah.
But then once you're a part of the church, you just realize so clearly that, even if this is how she feels, this is not the foundation of the church. It is an American mission church, how it was founded. And we already started having a lot of issues, but then maybe we could be there to help make the difference, and we wanted to join, we helped kind of start the Church in Action group, which, this city cares very much that I live in about human rights and justice. And they were kind of so that's an important thing in the church. That's how we're going to bring people in. If we live in this city and we don't, care about these things, then no one's going to want to come. And I'm like, shouldn't we just care about these things and lead that way? Because that's what Jesus did. But
because it goes back to that thread of conversion, or the point is to get them to be Christian.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so it's okay, here, why don't we talk about there were these different issues, and it was always we don't want to say climate change because that's a that could be seen as a political thing. And I'm like,
divisive.
You're in the Netherlands. And that is when it's just trying to please all the people, especially the American evangelicals that were staying here. And it's no, we don't want to talk about racism because that can also be seen as a political thing that's really going on in the U.S. And I'm like, well, here's a holiday here that is really racist and doing horrible things. We could talk about this. Oh, well, people have different opinions, so we want to stick to the things. And I'm just what are the things we can talk about? You can talk about anti-human trafficking because that's, and then we're the church doing good things, but you can't talk about a genocide going on. You can't talk about Palestine, You can't talk about these things because there's also people that are, Zionists who are there, and we have to please everyone basically. And also talking about inclusion of LGBTQ plus people. Well, the church isn't really ready for that. And then the way things people would say to me too about I went to a wedding and I sat next to someone who was gay. It's the first time I'd ever talked to a gay person before, but I didn't tell them what they're doing is wrong. I just tried to be a light by being there. And I'm like, that's, first of all, statistically, that's not the first gay person that you've been around. And second of all, really? And then looking at the church's resources, looking deeper into the website, it's all the same. It is very, and that's when I was also doing more and more deconstructing. Especially Rachel Held Evans talks a lot about being able to see evangelicalism around different other faiths. And then I was looking up, what does really non-denominational mean? And it actually comes from, because fundamentalism was getting a bad name and they wanted to rename it to something that was more open, and things like that. And so, anyway, we're already having this, like, okay, we want to be there. The pastor does seem to be wanting to move in the right direction, and we feel like we're part of this, but we were just feeling very conflicted already. And then I was 29 weeks pregnant with my second son, and I went into early labor, and that was just really, really traumatic.
Yeah.
And he ended up being born at 29 weeks. And there's a lot of medical things and reasons for that I won't get into because it's not really related to this. But and then we put together a huge prayer app, and I was also at the point I still wanted to believe God could still heal him, God could do anything, and got a bunch of people in a prayer group app, even my non-Christian friends, because I was just like, anyone to pray or just to be updated with Noam, and really was praying we didn't know if he'd live for a while. And then when we found out he had a brain bleed on one side of his body, that he'd have cerebral palsy, because this world is so ableist, we don't know anything about disabilities. We're really not properly educated. And so you just think, oh, my child's just going to have this really hard life. And will he ever be able to eat or drink on his own? Will he ever walk? Will he ever talk? Will he, any of these things? And so just praying, desperate praying for a miracle. I will say he did have a bleeding on the other side of his brain, and that went away. If that hadn't gone away, that did heal itself, which that also does happen. So it's not like just this does happen. And they thought with the first bleeding, they were like, a lot of times things heal themselves, but sometimes they don't, and it didn't. And so, so we knew he'd have at least physical disability, cerebral palsy on one side of his body.
Yeah.
Still, we're praying, and we were praying that he wouldn't have to need a shunt in his head. So, because of the bleeding, it blocked the fluid from circulating, and we didn't want him to have a little permanent inside. You can't see it at all. It's just a little lever that helps the drain go through. But if there's any issues with that happening, he has to go immediately to a hospital. So it's not something you could see. And even his disability when he gets older, it's not something you'll see. It's all just kind of hidden disabilities is what they often say. But so we were just praying the whole time, just not for a permanent shunt, not for a permanent shunt. And then the things that people were saying, all of the Christians around me were just making things so much worse, so much more traumatic, so much don't believe in the doctors even because God is bigger. Doctors say all the time that they should get this, and you just need to trust God because he's not going to have any disabilities. He's not going to this or that. And I was just we were holding on by a thread. And, also this idea with evangelicalism of us Christians, we have it all right and everybody else is going to burn for eternity, when it's what about the Muslim cleaner that would come and check in on me every day and pray for my child and see if I'm okay? What about the doctor who is not Christian, who is atheist, who stayed up and saved my child twice and rocked him to sleep because she just ended up loving him so much? Yeah. And what about the gay nurse who came and held me and became one of my biggest support systems in there? And then the things that the Christians were saying and doing, it was so hurtful and traumatic. And I'm this doesn't make sense. This isn't a good God. If these people are the ones that have no hope. Yeah, exactly. Well, the ones who are loving me and so supportive, and they're being, and I was when I feel I don't know where God is, where are you? I feel God has shown up in these people. So the closest I felt to God or my faith was when that nurse was holding me crying was when the woman would come in to pray for me, who also was like, there's still different forms of miracles. My dad was healed. That's why we trust in Allah. And so it's just like, what? Now, like, she's the evil one who's trying to, and that's not what they'd say. She's the evil one, of course, but they'd be like, she has it wrong. And also being like, so why is he healed and not my son? And also people saying like things like, this is all in God's good plan because God is in control of everything. As I'm watching my precious little baby getting like, hooked up to these machines, getting blood taken out, crying in pain, not knowing if he's going to survive, and just being like, don't you tell me that this is God's plan. Don't you tell me that God is going to use this for good. One of my friends told me, like, maybe God, like, when I found out he did have to get a permanent shunt. All those prayers, hundreds of people, I'm not kidding, hundreds of people praying he didn't get a shunt and believing he wouldn't, really believing that. And then someone was like, well, maybe God wanted this to happen so he could start a ministry with other people with shunt who will come to know Jesus. And I'm just like, so God wants my family to live in stress and Noam to have this the rest of his life for a good story? That sounds like toxic love. And then I was like, ooh, Ruben, a lot of things we've been told feels like toxic love. Like, you created your children that you love, but you also orchestrated into a way where you allowed this sin to come in, but then only some of them are going to choose, but you're also so involved that you could do anything and shit like this. So you
could
are like,
make yourself known more.
Yeah. And I'm just like, this all feels like toxic. Is this because of this is our faith, or is this because of evangelicalism that we've been a part of so long?
Yeah.
So our son ended up coming home with us. And he's so perfect. And also, I just want to say too, having a child that's part of the disability community is incredible. The other people in our community that it's been opened up to, the therapists, the doctors, our world has become so much more beautiful. He is such a gift. He is like, there's nothing wrong with his disabilities. It's the world, and it's the ideas of people thinking they need to pray away who he is. That is what's wrong. And so people kept doing that. Even the leader of the prayer group at the church was like, or of the prayer team, was like, we're continuing to pray for full restoration and healing. And I'm like, thank you, but we're actually like, we just think he's perfect, and he's safe. We know he's gonna live, and so we don't need to pray for a physical thing. And he's like, no, we are gonna pray. God wants him to be fully restored. And I'm like, I do not feel comfortable bringing my child up in a group like
environment
this,
like that. Yeah,
an environment like this.
And he's saying God wants him to be this. God wants him to be this. Well, then. If he really did, then he would have done something when 200 people were praying, like, but there, like you said, he's happy. He's perfect. You love him.
He's perfect.
And so often I saw a video on TikTok. I'll probably stitch it at some point, but she was saying, please stop praying for my son who is deaf. Like, please stop. People come up to us like on the streets and they try to pray for him. And she's like, he's perfect. He's happy. Please leave us alone, And I find that is how people feel. And that's why I feel so bad about everything in Redding. Thankfully, I was never a street preacher, really. That was never my vibe. I was, too shy to go up to people. So at least I didn't really perpetuate that much. But that's very much what it was in Bethel. And I mean, we did pray overseas. So not to say I'm like perfect, because 100% that was a part of the culture, is when you saw somebody with a disability, you had the answer and you needed to fix it.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Even that, when I saw that little girl, when I look back, I wasn't part of it. I didn't pray over her. I wasn't part of that group. But because I was part of the bigger group, I'm still So, but exactly.
We were there,
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, I'm just like, there's also really good books and resources. Like My Body Is Not a Prayer Request is a really good one.
Ooh, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, yeah,
Ooh, that
it's
sounds
really
good.
good. Yeah, and so, yeah, at the time, I was just felt like my faith was crumbling, and that's all I had to hold on to. I was like, this is all that this is what I've had. This is, and I just was like, I can't be a part of the system that is so hurtful to just, it became too much. It was years and years of like, this isn't okay, to where it became like, for my baby, once it's your child, you're just like, no, I can't do it. And so at the time I was like still desperate to find someone to like, or to still be encouraged and in my faith in some way, in a way that wasn't so traumatic, because I wanted to get encouragement, but the things people were saying was just so harmful. And so I ended up finding someone who, before she transitioned, I met her in Amsterdam, in the church where I met Ruben on that day, my husband.
Oh, no way.
And I was like, wait, I know this person. And she's also, I asked her, and she said I can give a little shout out to her, but Mish van Essen. And she, because she, talks a lot about like trans inclusion in the church and such. And like, I think she's also on like Brian Ricker podcast.
Oh, nice. I love Brian Ricker.
Like so she's connected to everyone as well.
That's awesome.
But what she was sharing, and I was like, I know her, is just like how even in the hardest, the darkest times of like finding like God showing up in the little things and in the people, and the way she just shared about how like going through the hardest time in the trauma, God didn't leave her. And just, she was sharing her beautiful story. And because I knew her, and I was like, and then I started reading the comments from Christians, death threats, like the most horrific things and names that you can call someone. And she was literally just being like, it's worth, like, stay alive. Like, God is, I'm still feeling loved and like God's beautiful child, and like help me survive. And it was like the encouragement I needed. Like, this is a part of my faith that I was like, okay, God is still there and showing up in the small things. And so I reached out to her because she was getting so many freaking death threats and horrific things people were saying from Christians.
Which, let's unpack that. I don't understand how the cognitive dissonance there. Like, have you read the Bible? Like, do you know Jesus at all? Is Jesus the type of person who would be giving death threats to somebody on a public forum or in any forum? It's crazy. And you see it so often, especially, just in our culture right now. I see so many comments from evangelicals and people who are like MAGA, and they're laughing at the suffering of people in our nation, and it blows my mind. I don't understand it.
Yeah. And you also see like a lot of you see like, it's like when you care about someone and you love something. My aunt said something to me when she visited. She was like, even if you don't get it, she was like, I am a cis woman. She was like, I don't necessarily, I don't have the experience. I don't get it. But when you see any person who's transitioned and you see them before and you see the after, why wouldn't you want that healing and freedom for someone you care about? And you see pictures of Mish and stuff as well, and you just see like not just the gorgeous transformation, she's a gorgeous woman, but you see like the like you see that like
the light.
It literally looks from like dark to light. You know what I mean? And it's like, so it's just kind of also these things of like, how come the things that are like good, loving, beautiful, encouraging, for people, how is that what's wrong again? And it just made me even more mad. So I like reached out to her. I was like, people are so horrible. Can I like get you a treat or something? And so like, and then she ended up like messaging me back, like, what's going on with you? And she ended up being like one of my close friends, so healing, helping me hold on to my faith. She is just like, she is my soul sister. I love her so much. And so it's just things like that where I feel like the people who have just continued, I feel like if anything God is doing is like showing up and being, God incarnate to me and loving me and my family and helping us heal are the people who everyone else is saying, you know, they're doing it wrong and they just want to live. Like, there's no agenda. They just want to live, you know. That also so my husband and I then had like a year in the Netherlands, this country. So if you get sick or chronically sick, or they consider like PTSD, being sick, you can stop from work. You still get paid and you'll come back to your position, and they do like checking up on how your healing is going. And
wow.
So my husband and I both went on sick leave for a year because not only because we had a lot of PTSD from the NICU, but my son kept having issues with his shunt. So the trauma also didn't end that whole year afterwards. It was like it continued. And basically during that time, we were like, okay, we have the time. We have given everything to like our belief. And Ruben, he's like, this is my whole life. I was born into it. This has been my everything. If this isn't true, what is, you know? And I was like, this has also been like, you know, I always said, who knows what my life would look like if I didn't have my faith, you know, especially like the difficulties growing up and stuff. And so Ruben and I did, you know, me with a journalist background, and my husband's like, if you do the Enneagram, like a 4 and a 5, like equally on the Enneagram, which is just very much like wants to look into all the details and the history and figure out. So we like deep dove. We listened to like all the podcasts, which is how we found you. And we like, we listened to so much. I literally just did like investigative journalistic work on all these different like things. I went through the Bible. We like watched so many documentaries. We looked at like the history of everything. And we just had been like, everything we'd been told, it felt like most of it from evangelicalism had just not been true. And that was really hard, especially things like with the Bible. That was the biggest thing, because in evangelicalism, you're really told to take the Bible literally. It's basically like Father, Son, Holy Spirit in the Bible. Someone was like, it's like the fourth Trinity, member of the Trinity.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah. And so when we started looking up, it's actually not even written by the people that we were told it's written by. It's actually not. Like, you know, all these things.
I didn't know that until April.
Oh, God.
Like, actually, like, I mean, I blew my mind. Finally read a book on the history of the Bible, and I was like, how did I know so little about the religion that I dedicated my entire life to?
Yeah, exactly. And, especially with that, it's like, you know, looking at like, as far back as if you go to like the church mothers and fathers, you know, the original, it's so different, incredibly different. And who put the group that of all men that put the Bible together? And they did have their own agendas and intentions. And when you look at the reasoning of the ESV, for example, it's literally to encourage the patriarchy. And it's like, and also the fact that the word homosexuality wasn't even in the Bible until 1946. To me, that was just like, you are like, this denomination has caused so much harm. Uganda used to be one of the most, because of the culture, a very, like, you know, people who were gay were leaders in society. It was not a frowned upon thing, but because of evangelical churches and ministries and leaders there now, it is punishable by death. So this is a mistranslation, which the people who made the translation apologized for it and changed it later. Like, that's years later. So that's even wild that we're not told that. Yeah. And then you're just kind of like, all these things and issues with like, also a lot of things like the heroes were told with like missions and why, or even like the story Ruben was told of like, you know, the Jim Elliot and going out and getting, going to the Amazon and getting speared by the indigenous people. So then the wives of them came back and to the village, and they all ended up becoming Christian and like be getting saved, like that hero story. Everyone should read this book.
It is We Will Not Be Saved.
This is the European version, the name of it. In the US, I think it's called We Are Jaguars, I think.
I have heard of that title before. I think somebody has told me that I should read it.
Oh my. So this book, this is like the hero, the story, not the story is what we're all told is the hero. Here is a young girl who one of the missionaries stayed. And when you're told these missionaries really integrated, they were part of the culture, she shares about what that woman was really like, how the damage it was done to her people and the culture, and how the first one example is like, you know, in the tribe, everyone would like walk around naked and they're like, that's evil, that's the devil, that's shameful. And she never no one is getting sexually assaulted. Body parts are seen as body parts. It's like the kids feel healthy and safe and protected because body parts are like normalized. And then she ends up wanting to like be Christian and follow God. She ends up going to their mission house, leaving her home, which is a lot of these indigenous children, and getting raped by the leader of it for years and years and years. And it's like, okay, so her culture, and that's what they're continued to say, that's the devil, this is the devil, everything. And that's like, and you see a miracle that happens in her village. And the person who like used like these natural things to perform that village, then that's evil, that's the devil, kind of going back to everything we've been saying. But for me, I was just like, this is literally like, has been in every evangelical group I've been part of. The story of like the Elliots has been like put up on a pedestal. And when you read, they brought oil companies, the missionaries brought oil companies into their village in the Amazon. It created war. It created, like I said, horrible poverty, addiction, abuse, destroyed the beautiful, beautiful culture. It's like the things that them following up and converting people did is destroying the planet. Yeah. It is awful. And it also is just like all the times I've been gaslit when I've tried to talk to people about like, actually, you know, if we're going to support missions or you're going to be part of it, are they actually harming or helping? People are going to build houses in Mexico and they're taking jobs from people and then those houses are falling apart. Is that helping? And I've also been part of yes. And I've also been part of the development, an organization that works in like social impact investing and like development work. And it is very much known, and it has Christian roots, but it's very much known that like mission organizations are destroying cultures and countries, and increasing poverty and causing harm. And so that's just, anyway. So books like this where it's like completely destroying. For me, it's like a thing. And also having a child with a disability who it doesn't feel safe, having people that I love in the queer community that are getting death threats, all these things, that I was just like, it's not a safe place for anyone who's not straight, white, able-bodied. And when you feel fine, and when you don't fit into that box, or you don't fit into the box anymore, you realize you're not a part of that box. It's terrifying. And even being on this podcast is scary for me because a lot of my friends and family, in-law family members and stuff, it's like people worrying about your soul, and
absolutely.
And the pressure that comes from it and the way people treat you. And I'm a very sensitive person that literally just cares about human rights and me like speaking out against these things. And like, yeah, the comments and things that people say is terrifying.
Yes.
And so I think that's just, that's been the saddest part, and losing friendships and the gaslighting and the way, like, friendship I've had, my best friend in the entire world. It was just like, the church is innocent and you're the problem. But I will say, after all that, like, it was really hard to leave. I think the biggest thing, I don't know for you, like how it was for you, Jubilee, but it's like also this fear of like, especially for women, if I leave, there goes our community, our world, our everything. And it's so scary to lose it all. But we are like since we've left that church and since we've become, we're like, we have more wonderful, like, we have the most amazing group of friends who just really unconditionally love us for who we are, really. And we are like, our marriage is just way healthier. It was this fear. And then it's like, actually, it's really freedom being away from all that. And my husband, because I'm just like, do you ever miss? Because that's everything, his whole world. And he's like, nope. And sometimes for him, because he's always just like, it's a cult. Like, that's how he's like, all of evangelicalism, it's just a cult. And he also, several organizations, like, he was part of this, but it's like quite funny. And then I'll stop your promise. But there's like a lot of our friends are queer, and we were sitting for his birthday, and we have like a ton of friends for his birthday, and he's just sitting at the end of the table with all our lesbian friends, and like and he has always been the one in the corner, never to plan stuff, and now he's the one, we need to have our besties over, we need to this and this, and our friends are like, Ruben, like, are you sure you're not just like, you know, a little fruity? Because you just flourish so much in the queer, like, you were just such, like, you're just such a loving, kindred spirit. Yeah, and exactly. And he's like, I think when people, like, you know, I think it's especially beautiful when people love someone despite their, not despite, but love people for the heart and not
for no matter what.
Their gender. He's like, I think that's beautiful, and I wish I could say the same, but attraction, no, it's just me. And then he's like, honestly, it's just because I grew up in such like conservative, like charismatic evangelicalism, where I always felt like I had to be a certain way. I always felt like I had to be this type of person. And I'm just loved and accepted by people who have been through the worst of it just to be who they are, and came out like here and loving and accepting. And he's like, and I've never been in a more loving, accepting, you know, our different groups of people. And so he's just like, I just thought that was so funny, because they're like, are you a little bit? And he's like, I'm not, but this group, like, I just feel loved and accepted finally. Yeah.
Oh, so, I love that. Yeah. It's hard to let go of those toxic relationships, but it feels like once you do it, it's very freeing. You know, I essentially had to walk away from the maid of honor situation and all of the family that also went along with those. I mean, those people, they were in my wedding. It was half of my bridal party. It's these people that I thought I was going to grow old with and stuff. But there was so much religious gaslighting of, well, just forgive, just drop it, with no apologies, no accountability. And while there definitely is a grief of, it hits me in waves. Maybe I'll feel sad about it once every couple months, but for the most part, I've just felt so free. You know, I thought that I would be grieving a lot more, to be honest, because these people were my core people, but there is such a freedom of feeling like I'm able to breathe. All of the people that I'm around, I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I don't feel this like constant pain of being in relationship with people who believe such things that harm me. And I feel gaslit all the time, to just feel pure love. And, you know, that's what you're told you're getting in the church a lot of the time, you know, and not to say people can't find healthy church dynamics somewhere. I never encountered it. I'm not going to say that it doesn't exist, but I am experiencing that outside of the church. So where do you feel like you guys have landed now?
Yeah, I think, it's really interesting. I think because what we see is we've seen God show up in such bigger ways, or faith show up in such bigger ways than we'd ever been told this is the box that faith belongs to and God belongs to. I think Ruben and I are just more of like, we are still passionate about the way of Jesus and caring about the oppressed and marginalized and believing in something bigger than ourselves. But at the same time, like, I think, like I said, a lot of my friends that don't have anything to do with Christianity are following the way of Jesus way more than
Yeah.
a lot of my Christian friends and family. And so I think for us, learning people who are actually following that way of like love and kindness and caring about the oppressed and the vulnerable, and we're very passionate about human rights, especially for children. And so, you know, no longer, oh, we're friends, but you also are still supporting a genocide. You know, like that's not, yeah. So we're just, I think people who, yeah, that's kind of our zone in our world. And yeah, I'll leave it at that too. I feel like it also, when people ask that, it's always like, I would worried about, you know, what does your faith look like? And some things I want to share, like I'd love to share the experiences with people who I love and care about, but I know their first fear and thing is going to be, has she been led astray? And,
Are you saved? Are you going to hell?
Yeah, has she been led astray, or is she going to influence me in a bad way? You know?
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, really sad, because that's, anyway, to go back to your question, for us, I think it's like, yeah, this way of love and goodness in the world, and holding on to the things that we see as that were beautiful and good and healthy, and out with the oppressive institution that is harming those on the margins that we are called to stand up for. So I won't label that, but that's what it is.
Yeah. What do you wish you could tell your younger self, like back to the Campus Crusades for Christ, before you got involved in all of this? What do you wish you had known back then?
That's such a good question. And I think looking back too, because in some ways I wouldn't have like my partner and our children, you know, if we
You're
hadn't
like, I don't
been down
regret
that
it
road.
because I have my life. Yeah.
But
I feel the same way. I'm like, I wouldn't have Bran if I didn't join a cult and somehow end up back here at that time. But
yeah, exactly. Ruben's like, our souls, we would have found each other. We would have found each other some way. I'm like,
it's so romantic.
No, I don't think so, because you were also really deep in it. You were like born and raised in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I would have just, like with the gaslighting, the main thing is like holding on to what's true and what you really believe, and listening, being able to listen to your intuition, because I was taught so much that everything, you know, I'm the bad, sinful one, so don't trust in your intuition or your heart, but to trust God. Okay, well, what's God saying? This version of the Bible that somebody wrote with an intention, or this one man who is saying this is what God is saying? To just like, there's nothing wrong with having a faith if it's pointing towards, you know, supporting people, and if it gives you strength in really difficult times. But I wish I'd been told, always check if it's actually the institution is harming or helping. I think that's the main thing.
No, absolutely. And it sounds like you had that in you throughout all of that time, and that was being raised throughout a lot of those mission trips that you were going on, that something inside of you was already feeling uneasy. And like I said before, I feel like so often, I feel like those are the people who end up deconstructing, or the people who really crave authenticity, the people who really want to help and really see the person. You know, it's not just about converting for you. It was about, I want to actually make sure that I'm helping and not harming, and we're not leaving something bad behind in our wake here.
And I'm just so sad that it took me so long to realize and figure it out, because I'd been told for so long, all the bad is hidden, is not talked about in the church. They only highlight the good, and you're told these amazing hero stories, which actually is hell for the people who live there. And so I'm just so sad that it took me so long to figure it out. This long, even someone that is like educated and trying that. And if I stayed in it for so long, I understand how people get stuck. But sometimes I'm like, if people just knew the truth, you know, then they could stop harming so many people. But people don't want to. And that's the hardest thing. Yeah. And that's when I have to be like, okay, I tried, and I'm not going to stay into friendships and relationships that people just want to double down on toxic
You can only
beliefs,
do what you can do. And before we go, I wanted to ask you, do you have any book recommendations, since it sounds like y'all really went on a deep dive?
Yes. We have I have a lot of books. I should probably just like send you a little list. And I have a lot of people that and also like, I'm sure you have a ton of really good ones too, like podcasts and things like that as well, that really help. I've just read this book and I was like, this is everything that I'm going to like talk to Jubilee about. What helped me in the beginning really was like, I mean, all the Rachel Held Evans books, especially on the Bible, was, now I've forgotten the name of it.
The Rachel Held Evans? Oh, I don't know it.
Inspired.
Okay.
Yeah, that really helped. And she's very gentle and passionate. Also, then she passed away, and the way people treated her was so awful. But her books really helped in the beginning. And then I think doing like some good work. I think the film 1946, that's not a book, of course. It's a documentary. That one's really good for things. But yeah, on the Bible, keep looking at just making sure the resources are not the same people, the same organization that's coming through. But I definitely have a lot of book recommendations. I think it's like how far you want to get into it. I'm also, my journalist background, I'm like, give me data, give me like statistics on what's going on, give me like, I want to see proof of this and this and this. And then, because I was fighting I was like, so I can stay in this. And then I'm just like, this is not good. Like I was searching for the good and I was only coming across the bad. So anyway,
well, you can give me a list of books and I can definitely share it on Instagram. That way people can go and find some resources, because I always get that question. And I kind of took a break from reading. I used to listen to like 100 audiobooks a year, and then I kind of stopped. I got really into podcasts, and I'm trying to get back into reading because people are asking me for deconstruction books, and I honestly, books were not a huge part of my deconstruction, so I have read like 3 or 4 at this point, but I'm definitely looking for recommendations as well.
I'll write a list, because some,
Awesome.
like I said, some really helped me. And also I can send other resources too that like I did a lot of like on stats and articles and stuff like that, but I can put a list together.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so amazing. Oh my gosh, your story just has so many layers to it. And I love that your heart for people just really shone throughout all of these different phases of life, as much as it possibly can in these like very harmful systems. But I love that you always really tried to just help as much as you possibly could, and that it's clear that you always just wanted to know the truth, and now that is kind of where you've landed.
Yeah, thanks, Jubilee. And also, like, I'm just so grateful for you and your podcast, because a lot of times too in like this work, I just felt like it was often, people that I couldn't relate to. And then like hearing your podcast, I'm like, this is someone like me who's like, has such similar stories, and just like your time in Bethel. I didn't even share about my times in Bethel, like visiting there, but like, so all the things you share on that too, I'm like, yes. And it's just been so helpful of you just like sharing your story and then sharing other people. And I think your resilience has helped me too, because so much of you just like sharing just the awful things and the trauma you've been through, and seeing how it has been healing you. And then like the way that when people are just say hurtful things, how you respond, I also just love and respect too. So I'm really grateful for the way that you've like been healing and processing with like kind of the deconstruction community, because it's healed so much of me. And my husband as well. That's why he was like, tell her she's the best.
Well, tell him he's the best. No. Awesome.
He is the best.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You have no idea how much that means to me. It's crazy I never thought that there would be such a large community of people who felt this way. I felt like it was very niche. When I first started posting about Bethel, I thought, okay, only ex-Bethel people are going to care about this. But the longer it goes on, the more I realize that so many of these churches, it's the same story. And pretty much all of evangelicalism, can relate to the insanity.
Not just American evangelicalism. Everyone's like American evangelical, and like it stems from that in the U.S. and
it's spread and it's gone.
Yeah, and the right is spreading all over the world, and it's a huge part of it too. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And if you guys could please leave a positive review for Healedish, that would mean the world to me. It really helps the show grow. So with all of that being said, I will see you guys next week for another episode of Healedish. Bye.